Welcome, friends. This lodge in the Washington, D.C. area holds a meeting every Sunday at 11 o'clock to discuss a particular topic, and then we go out 24 hours a day and attempt to assimilate this wisdom of religion known as Theosophy. It's not really a religion, it's a wisdom of the ages, and apply it to our daily lives, knowing that it's a life to be lived and not just a theory we're talking about. Today's talk is on cycles. Next week's presentation is on karma. We follow the declaration on the back of our program. The United Lodge of Theosophists Declaration reads as follows. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. And it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with the declared purposes and to desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. The following is the form signed by associates of the United Lodge of Theosophists who wish to sign it. Being in sympathy with the purposes of this lodge as set forth in its declaration, I hereby record my desire to be enrolled as an associate, it being understood that such association calls for no obligation on my part other than that which I myself determine. Today's reading is from the Voice of the Silence. Thou canst create this day thy chances for thy morrow on the great journey, or the whole complete cycle of existences in one round. Causes sown each hour bear each its harvest of effects, for rigid justice rules the world. With mighty sweep of never-erring action, it brings to mortals lives of weal or woe, the karmic progeny of all our former thoughts and deeds. Take then as much as merit hath in store for thee, O thou of patient heart. Be of good cheer, and rest content with fate. Such is thy karma, the karma of the cycle of thy births, the destiny of those who in their pain and sorrow are born along with thee, rejoice and weep from life to life, chained to thy previous actions. Act thou for them today, and they will act for thee tomorrow. 'Tis from the bud of renunciation of the self that swingeth the sweet fruit of final liberation. To perish doomed is he who out of fear of Mara refrains from helping man, lest he should act for self. The pilgrim who would cool his weary limbs in running waters, yet dares not plunge for terror of the stream, risks to succumb from heat. Inaction based on selfish fear can bear but evil fruit. The selfish devotee lives to no purpose. The man who does not go through his appointed work in life has lived in vain. Today's talk is based on Mr. Judge's Ocean of Theosophy, which parallels in full the teachings of H.P. Blavatsky. They were partners in this endeavor. His work was to make Theosophy more understandable to the Westerner. And chapter 14 here is on cycles. Cycles is one of the most important doctrines. Although few cycles are known to the West, cycles cause the reappearance of former living personages. They affect life and evolution. When man leaves the globe, convulsions and cataclysms, all these things are involved with cycles. Reincarnation and karma are intermixed with cyclic law, including the cycle back of civilizations. So cycles have many, many meanings. Coming under cycles are avatars: Krishna, Buddha, minor personages, and great leaders. The interaction of cycles causes convulsions. There are moon, sun, and sidereal cycles of stars, individual cycles, and that of reincarnation. The motion through the constellations, the meaning of the story of Jonah in the Bible, the zodiacal clock, how ideas are impressed and preserved by nations, earthquakes, cosmic fire, glaciation, and floods are all associated with cycles. Now that's the big picture that Mr. Judge presented. And in the chapter 14, he said, all this is why the doctrine of cycles is one of the most important of the whole theosophical system. Though the least known and one of the most infrequently referred to. Western investigators have for some centuries suspected that events move in cycles. A few European literary writers have dealt with the subject, but in a very incomplete fashion. This incompleteness and want of accurate knowledge have been due to the lack of belief in spiritual things and the desire to square everything with materialistic science. Science is based on, theosophy includes science, but science comes after theosophy. Cyclic law is one that is not given out in detail by the masters of wisdom, but enough has been divulged, and enough was for a long time known to the ancients to add considerably to our knowledge. A cycle is a ring or turning, as the derivation of the word indicates. The corresponding words in Sanskrit are yuga, kalpa, and manvantara. Yuga comes nearest to what we in the West know as cycles, as yuga is lesser in duration than kalpa or manvantara. The beginning of a cycle must be a moment that, added to other moments, makes a day. And those added together constitute months, years, decades, and centuries. Beyond this, the West hardly goes. It recognizes the moon cycle and the great sidereal one, but looks at both and upon the others merely as periods of time. If we are to consider them as but lengths of time, there is no profit except to the dry student or the astronomer. Westerners acknowledge that cycles exist, but do not regard them as having a great bearing on human life, and certainly no bearing on the actual recurrence of events or the reappearance on the stage of life of persons who once lived in the world. The Theosophical theory is distinctly otherwise. Not only are the cycles named actual physical facts in the respective time, but they and other periods have a very great effect on human life and the evolution of the globe with all the forms of life therein. Starting with the moment and proceeding through a day, this theory erects the cycle into a comprehensive ring which includes all in its limits. So, when did the first moment come? This question cannot be answered, but it can be said that the truth is held by the ancient Theosophists to be that at the first moments of the solidification of this globe, the mass of matter involved attained a certain and definite rate of vibration. The rate of vibration which will hold through all vibrations in any part of it until its hour for dissolution comes. These rates of vibration are what determine the different cycles. And contrary to the ideas of Western science, the doctrine is that the solar system and the globe we are now on will come to an end when the force behind the whole mass, seen and unseen matter, has reached its limit of duration under cyclic law. Here our doctrine is again different from both the religious and scientific one. We do not admit that the ending of the force is a withdrawal by God of his protection, nor the sudden propulsion by him of another force against the globe, but that the force at work in determining the great cycle is that of man himself. As the spiritual being, that is. When man is done using the globe, he leaves it. And then with him goes out the force holding all together. The consequence is dissolution by fire or water or whatnot. These phenomena being simply effects and not causes. The ordinary scientific speculation on this head are that the earth may fall into the sun, or that a comet of destiny may destroy the globe, or that we may collide with a greater planet, known or unknown, etc., etc. But reincarnation being the great law of life and progress, it is interwoven with that of the cycles and karma. So these three, karma, reincarnation, and cycles, work together, and in practice it is almost impossible to disentangle reincarnation from cyclic law. Individuals and nations, in definite streams, return in regularly recurring periods to the earth, and thus bring back to the globe the arts, the civilization, the very persons who once were on it at work. And as the units in nations and race are connected together by invisible strong threads, large bodies of such units moving slowly but surely all together reunite at different times and emerge again and again together into new race and new civilization as the cycles roll their appointed rounds. So the souls who made the most ancient civilizations will come back and bring the old civilizations with them in idea and essence, which being added to what others have done for the development of the human race in its character and knowledge, will produce a new and higher state of civilization. This new and better development will not be due to books, to records, to arts, or mechanics, because all those are periodically destroyed so far as physical evidence goes. But the soul ever retaining and manas the knowledge it once gained, and always pushing to completer development the higher principles and powers. The essence of progress remains and will surely come out as the sun shines. And along this road are the points where the small and large cycles of avatars bring out for man's benefit the great characters who mold the race from time to time. The cycles of avatars include several smaller ones. The greater are those marked by the appearance of Rama and Krishna among the Hindus, of Menes among the Egyptians, of Zoroaster among the Persians, and of Buddha to the Hindus and other nations of the East. Buddha is the last of the great avatars and is in a larger cycle than is Jesus of the Jews. For the teachings of Jesus and the Jews are the same as those of Buddha. And concurs with what Buddha has taught to those who instructed Jesus. Another great avatar is yet to come, corresponding to Buddha and Krishna combined. Krishna and Rama were of the military, civil, religious, and occult order. Buddha of the ethical, religious, and mystical, in which he was followed by Jesus. Muhammad was a minor intermediate, one for a certain part of the race, and was civil, military, and religious. In these cycles, we can include mixed characters who have had great influence on nations, such as King Arthur, Pharaoh, Moses, Charlemagne, reincarnated as Napoleon Bonaparte, Clovis of France, reborn as Emperor Frederick III of Germany, and Washington, the first president of the United States of America, where the root for the new race is being formed. At the intersection of the great cycles, dynamic effects follow and alter the surface of the planet by reason of the shifting of the poles of the globes or other convulsion. This is not a theory generally accepted, but we hold it to be true. Man is a great dynamo, making, storing, and throwing out energy. And when masses of men composing a race make and distribute energy, there is a resulting dynamic effect on the material of the globe, which will be powerful enough to be distinct and cataclysmic. That there have been tsunamis, massive fires, and other vast and awful disturbances in the strata of the world is admitted on every hand and now needs no proof. These have been due to earthquakes and ice formation so far as concerns geology. But in respect to animal forms, the cyclic law is that certain animal forms now extinct. Cyclic law is that certain animal forms now extinct, and also certain human ones not known, but sometimes suspected, will return again in their own cycle. And certain human languages, now known as dead, will be in use once more at their appointed cyclic hour. The Metonic cycle is that of the moon. It is a period of about 19 years, which being completed, the new and the full moons return on the same day of the month. The cycle of the sun is a period of 28 years, which having elapsed, the Dominical or Sunday letters return to their former place and proceed in the former order according to the Julian calendar. The great sidereal year is a period taken by the equinoctial points to make in their precession a complete revolution of the heavens. It is composed of 25,868 solar years, almost. It is said that the last sidereal year ended about 10,000 years ago, at which time there must have been on this earth a violent convulsion or series of convulsions, as well as the distributions of nations. The completion of this grand period brings the earth into newer spaces of the cosmos, not in respect to its own orbit, but by reason of the actual progress of the sun in an orbit of its own that cannot be measured by any observer of the present day, but which is guessed at by some and located in one of the constellations. Affecting man especially are the spiritual, psychic, and moral cycles. And out of these grow the national, racial, and individual cycles. Race and national cycles are both historical. The individual cycles are of reincarnation, of sensation, and of impression. The length of the individual reincarnation cycle for the general mass of people is 1,500 years. That can vary substantially. And this, in its turn, gives us a large historical cycle related closely to the progress of civilization. As the masses of persons return from Devachan, it must follow that the Roman, the Greek, the Old Aryan, and other ages will be seen again, and can, to a very great extent, be plainly traced. But man is also affected by astronomical cycles, because man is an integral part of the whole. And these cycles mark the periods when mankind as a whole will undergo a change. In the sacred books of all nations, these are often mentioned, and they are in the Bible of the Christians, as for instance in the story of Jonah in the belly of the whale. This is an absurdity when read as history, but not so as an astronomical cycle. Jonah is in the constellations, and when that astronomical point, which represents man, reaches a point in the zodiac which is directly opposite the belly of Cetus, or the whale on the other side of the circle, by what is known as the process of opposition, then Jonah is said to be in the center of the fish and is thrown out at the expiration of the period when that man point has passed so far along in the zodiac as to be out of opposition to the whale. Similarly, as the same point moves through the zodiac, it is brought by opposition into the different constellations that are exactly opposite from century to century while it moves along. During these progresses, changes take place among men and on earth, exactly signified by the constellations when those are read according to the right rules of symbology. It is not claimed that the conjunction causes the effect, but that ages ago the masters of wisdom worked out all the problems in respect to man and found in the heavens the means for knowing the exact dates when events are sure to recur, and then by imprinting in the minds of older nations the symbology of the zodiac, the masses were able to preserve the record and the prophecy. Thus, in the same way that a watchmaker can tell the hour by the arrival of the hands or the works of the watch at certain fixed points, the sages can tell the hour for events by the zodiacal clock. This is not, of course, believed today, but it will be well understood in future centuries. And as the nations of the earth have all similar symbols in general for the zodiac, and as also the records of races long dead have the same, it is not likely that the vandal spirit of today's Westerners will be able to efface the valuable heritage of our evolution. In Egypt, the Dendera zodiac tells the same tale as the one left to us by the old civilization of the American continent. And all of these are from the same source. They are the work of the sages who come at the beginning of the great human cycle and give to man, when he begins his toilsome ascent up the road of development, those great symbols and ideas of an astronomical character which will last through all the cycles. In regard to great cataclysms occurring at the beginning and ending of the great cycles, the main laws governing the effects are those of karma and re-embodiment, or reincarnation, proceeding under cyclic rule. Not only is man ruled by these laws, but every atom of matter as well. And this mass of matter is constantly undergoing a change at the same time with man. It must therefore exhibit alterations corresponding to those through which the thinker is going. On the physical plane, effects are brought out through the electrical and other fluids acting with the gases on the solids of the globe. At the change of a great cycle, they reach what may be termed the exploding point and cause violent convulsions like earthquakes, floods, fire, and ice. Earthquakes may be brought on, according to this philosophy, by two general causes. First, gradual caving in or sinking of a landmass, or elevation under the earth crust due to heat and strain and steam. The second general cause being electrical and magnetic changes, which affect water and earth at the same time. These electrical and magnetic changes have the power to instantaneously make the earth fluidic without melting it, thus causing immense and violent displacements. And this effect is sometimes seen now in earthquake districts when similar electrical causes are at work in a smaller measure. Floods of general extent are caused by displacement of water from the subsidence or elevation of land, and by those combined with electrical change, which induces a copious discharge of moisture. The discharge of moisture is not a mere emptying of a cloud, but a sudden turning of vast bodies of fluids and solids into water. Universal fires come on from electrical and magnetic changes in the atmosphere by which the moisture is withdrawn from the air and turned into a fiery mass, as well as by the sudden expansion of the solar magnetic center into 7 such centers, thus burning the globe. Ice cataclysms come on not only from the sudden alteration of the poles, but also from the lower temperature due to the alteration of the warm fluid currents in the sea and the hot magnetic currents in the earth, the first being known to science, the latter not. The lower stratum of moisture is suddenly frozen, and vast tracts of land covered in a night with many feet of ice. This can easily happen to the British Isles if the warm currents of the ocean are diverted from its shores. Both Egyptians and Greeks had their cycles, but in our opinion derived them from the Indian sages. The Chinese always were a nation of astronomers and have recorded observations reaching far back of the Christian era. But as they belong to an old race which is doomed to extinction, strange as the assertion may appear, their conclusions will not be correct for the Aryan race. On the coming of the Christian era, a heavy pall of darkness fell on the minds of those in the West, and India was, for many centuries, isolated so as to preserve these great ideas during the mental night of Europe. This isolation was brought about deliberately as a necessary precaution taken by the Great Lodge, because its adepts, knowing the cyclic laws perfectly, wished to preserve philosophy for future generations. Mr. Judge noted that the grammatical cycle tallied almost exactly with the current periods. Taking this globe, its government and evolution proceed under Manu, or man, and from this is the term Manvantara, or being tween Manus. The course of evolution is divided into 4 yugas for every race in its own time and way. These yugas do not affect all mankind at one time and the same time, as some races are in one of the yugas while others are in a different cycle. For example, we are now in Kali Yuga, which is here, the Dark Ages. But there are some among us, this doesn't know who they are, but they're in the Golden Age, the Krita Yuga, which is a much larger age. The Red Indian, for instance, is in the end of his Stone Age, while the Aryans are in quite a different state. These 4 yugas are Krita, or Satya, which is the golden. Okay. Krita, which is silver, Vapara, which is bronze, and Kali, which is the black or the Iron Age. The present age for the West and India is Kali Yuga, especially in respect to moral and spiritual development. The first of these is slow in comparison with the rest, and the first being Krita. And the present Kali is very rapid, its motion being accelerated precisely like certain astronomical periods known today, in regard to the moon, but not fully worked out. Mr. Judge provided the table here on the board. This student understands that it is important that we as individuals, families, and nations not only act in the moment the best we can, based on our current knowledge, but we need to hold on to what's coming along over these immense period of time, which is, no, this is not a beginning, this is not an end, this is just a year of Brahma's life, which is 311 trillion years. So this goes on, and the numbers are almost meaningless to us who think in hundreds of thousands, but they're very, very important when it comes to our personal growth and development, and us doing what we can at the moment, because each moment transfers into an individual's development, into a family's development, to a national development, and to moving along of these yugas, maybe tightening up this one and making this one greater, or so forth. I'll say no more because that's about all that needs to be said right now about that. It's overwhelming. The first 5,000 years of Kali Yuga ended between the years 1897 and 1898. This Yuga began about 3,100 years before the Christian era, at the time of Krishna's death. Cyclic changes continue to proceed as year after year the souls from prior civilizations are being incarnated in this period, when liberty of thought and action are not so restricted in the West as they have been in the past by dogmatic religious prejudice and bigotry. Well, we still have plenty, but it's not as much as we had before. We are still in a cycle of transition, when, as a transition period should indicate, everything in philosophy, religion, and society is changing. In a transition period, Mr. Judge adds that the full and complete figures and rules respecting cycles are not given out to a generation which elevates money above all thoughts and scoffs at the spiritual view of man and nature. This ends the prepared presentation, which is, again, I recommend this highly for those who are serious about development. It's a brief, basically, of what's in the secret doctrine in Isis Unveiled. But we need to study it and try to apply it. And I'll open the floor for questions and comments.
Thank you. All of this is 1 year of Brahma's life? 1
year of Brahma's life.
All those cycles?
Yeah, well, 300, yeah.
My
360 of the, if it goes down here, I mean, it's hard enough. We can relate to this one, and this student can hardly relate to any of the rest of them. But those are the various yugas, okay? You add all those up, and they basically come out to that number down there.
Wow. Huh.
Add the dawns or twilights between each mandu is 25,920,000. Between each, that's between each mandu. These rains and dawns make 1,000 Mahayugas, a kalpa, or a day of Brahma, which is 4,320,000,000 years. That's the day. Well, then Brahma's night equals the same amount, so we come up with 8,640,000,000. And then it goes on right on down. 360 of these days is this 3 trillion, well, and there we go.
Who figures this out?
The Masters of Wisdom, Mr. Judge, being a representative of that school. Well, we will close the meeting with that, and look forward to being with you again next Sunday on Karma. And this being the first Sunday of December, we also have the opportunity of having a roundtable after this meeting on the Bhagavad Gita and notes in Bhagavad Gita. We do that every first and third Sunday. And we are remembering the Herbert Walker Bush family in their time. Mr. Bush was our president, and he had many offices in the public service, and he was loved in his community and by the nation and the world.